Welcome everybody. Great to see so many people have joined our webinar, Documentum. Should I stay or should I go? Let me start quickly by introducing myself. My name is Sjoerd Alkema, a really Dutch name. So we're based in Holland, I'm from the Netherlands. I've got around 12 years now experience in ECM consultancy at two different system integrators, Unisys and Capgemini. And now I'm working for Xillio for about 2 years. Within Capgemini, I was responsible for our ECM propositions portfolio in the Netherlands. So from a Capgemini perspective, that meant working together with all the large ECM vendors like IBM, FileNet, EMC, which is now OpenText, and OpenText themselves, but also Xillio and Alfresco. So I know the market quite well in terms of portfolio. As Purdy also already mentioned, I'm now head of professional services at Xillio. Very shortly than Xillio, we are a specialist in content migration and integration. We've done that for 12 years. We are a software company, started as services, now fully focusing on software to do content migration and integrations. All right, probably this is the webinar has two audio options. It's voice over IP, or you can dial in. I see almost everybody is through the voice over IP. That is fine. Important is questions. If you have any questions, you can submit them during the webinar in the question box, in the chat box actually. Or after the webinar, we've got an email address for that. You can write them to webinar@xillio.com. All right. Let's go to the agenda of this webinar. I started with a brief introduction. That's best. Then I want to go to an ECM market view. I want to set a context to talk about the Documentum OpenText acquisition. So that's next. After the ECM context, we'll go to OpenText and Documentum and talk about our vision on that and what's going to happen. That will lead to 3 scenarios, and that's around the stay or go, of course. Then we'll have a summary of everything that was mentioned, and we'll have some time for questions. And as Purdy said, I think I'll be probably around 30 minutes, and then we'll have time for questions. So first, some context, what's happening in the ECM market. Or should we say, the content services, platforms and applications market. Because I don't know if you've all seen it, but Gartner recently released, it's 5th of December 2016, recently released their new vision on ECM, and actually they say we have to reinvent ECM. It's completely different now because of all the business needs, because of content is perceived differently, and they call it content services. I kind of agree with that. I do agree with that it's changed. I think there's a need for mostly integrating all content, because content is demanded every time, everywhere, within every process, and it's just no longer feasible to have that in one enterprise content management environment, as all the great vendors like EMC, OpenText, IBM FileNet really want it. So it's changing, but what I think Gartner is a little bit missing here is the insights part. I think also everything needs to be connected, because content can deliver a lot of insight in trends, in patterns. You need to do analysis on your content. I think they miss that a little bit in this. However, still, it is changing, so it's good that there's some new light on the kind of old term ECM. Then, to set the context more, I want to show how M-Files, an ECM vendor, they're in the Magic Quadrant also, quite on the right, visionary. And I think they are visionary because they are no longer trying to get all the business on the content level towards themselves, but they see that the winner of next year is the one who is integrating with its competitors. So how they do that is they talk about an intelligent metadata layer, and they connect to different repositories, and they give the user a single point of access to all this content. I think this is indeed the future of ECM. Everything is more integrated, everything is more connected. And then also to set some context, I think the file sync and share the rise of those solutions really hurt the traditional ECM market. You cannot go around Dropbox and Box and other solutions in that area, Ignite, anymore. They are just part of the enterprise landscape. They tried, of course, so they bought solutions who did the same, but they never were able to give them the same because, of course, they all started on-premise. They don't have the cloud capabilities. So I think this scenario that they're just part of the enterprise content landscape, that means that there is a change in ECM, and you need to integrate everything, and you can't have it all in one solution anymore. So that's what's happening in the ECM market. Where we think it is going, what we see as the future of ECM is, I've written down three kind of namings, concepts. I think enterprise content integration is maybe the most important one. That's really necessary because we can't go around different applications anymore. There will be different applications. Users will use different applications. However, still, content will go over different applications, and in a process that goes through the total enterprise, touches on very different applications, possibly. So what is needed is content integration, or you could call it an enterprise content service bus, something that arranges the distribution of content within the enterprise. What then also comes to mind if you talk about that is master content management. I mean, if you have everything, you can also think about deduplication, think about metadata management within one environment. I think this is where the enterprises in terms of content management are going. Let me see. Of course, this is powered by a content ETL process. So it wouldn't surprise me if in a few years there will be a magic quadrant of Gartner talking about enterprise content integration. So this is to set the context of my story around OpenText and Documentum. Because what happened, OpenText acquires the Dell EMC Enterprise Content Division, ECD. I wasn't really surprised by it because I think everybody knew it was kind of for sale. However, it did surprise me that OpenText bought it, but a very interesting change in the landscape of ECM vendors, because I mean they are now huge. So my take on OpenText and Documentum, I will do that mostly based on my experience on different applications of the two vendors. So we have OpenText Content Server, of course. It's the, you could say, the flagship of OpenText. It's their main ECM product, and and I mean, I've implemented it quite some times. It just really does the job well. Then, where actually my content management life started was eDocs. And here you see they already have two propositions in place. They now shift eDocs a little bit to the area of small businesses, small law firms, not many licenses needed, kind of like a small application that does the job. I'll touch on this later because they try to really integrate this. They try to move it all to Content Server, but did not really work. It's still out there. I know half of the Dutch government is working with eDocs, and I think even all Canadian government is. And it just does the job, but it is not ready in terms of architecture and features for the next level, of course. Then we have Documentum. In this screenshot, it's with the front end D2. I've also implemented Documentum quite some times. We've done a recent project here where we migrate into Documentum with a D2 interface. Of course, there's a lot of overlap between those two solutions if you talk about Content Server and if you talk about Documentum with the D2 interface. I do find that Documentum, although it's very scalable and might even be better scalable than Content Server, we do find some performance issues, especially in workflow area. However, what I want to the point I want to make here is, in terms of functionality, of course, there's almost only overlap. Then there's Leap. I'm very enthusiastic about Leap. This really is it looks really like an amazing opportunity now for OpenText. I think they can go battle the other enterprise file share and sync solutions if this works how it's going, how it is described. And then they have InfoArchive. This is also totally new for the OpenText suite now. I think mostly these two were why they acquired the division, the content division, and I think it's a very valuable addition to their portfolio. So our opinion on the suite now, some bullets regarding this acquisition. I think InfoArchive truly is a valuable addition to the OpenText portfolio. They don't have these kinds of structured archiving opportunities now, really, and InfoArchive really works great. We've some experience in using it, and yeah, it's just very efficient in terms of application rationalization. It's a very good solution. And then we have Leap. It has the potential and looks to be very great cloud solution, extending the enterprise file share and sync capabilities. And I think now we can forget about Tempo. So Tempo was the file share and sync solution OpenText had, and I've seen it working sometimes. However, because of course the installations were all on premise, you can't really compete to the easiness of cloud. Then, regarding this acquisition, I think there will be integration-focused challenges with Leap and the new repository Content Server, because, of course, even though they're in functions quite the same, Content Server and Documentum, in terms of backend and architecture, they're quite different. So I think, and I already heard it from OpenText friends and guys here in Holland working with OpenText, that Leap is really going to be the new target to integrate Content Server in. But of course, now based on Documentum, that might be a challenge. Then functionality, like I mentioned already, it's largely overlapping. Of course, they do have some other things they didn't have, like really good capture capabilities with Captiva. In output management, we have the document sciences, but of course stream service is also part of that. We'll have to see how that goes. BPM, it's quite big within in OpenText as a separate suite. Documentum, I think not really, so we'll have to see how that goes. So there's a lot of integration work to do, but in the history of OpenText integration, I mean, they integrate the products in one suite, but not really into each other, is my experience. And I've even noticed a push to replace eDocs into Content Server, and it did not really work. Another thing regarding the acquisition, I think Documentum is of course very interesting because of the install base in verticals and also vertical solutions in pharmacy, healthcare and finance. But to keep it positive, I think, and I've talked to some guys working with EMC or that were working with EMC, they're all very happy that Documentum is now part of a core business EIM vendor. So it really gets the attention it deserves, and they get the attention they deserve. Of course, it was a little bit in a corner with the large storage guys. So that's our opinion on the suite right now. This is what OpenText says. You could also say, of course. They have strategic plans to create a stronger, more complete portfolio, and I believe that. I mean, there are really some additions, like I said, the Info Archive and Leap, that are very, very interesting. They are, of course, saying that they will preserve current investments and enhancements and integrations. I think it would be hard to keep developing Documentum in terms of functionality if you also have Content Server. They should make a choice strategically within that, but we have to see how that goes. And then here's what they say themselves. The Leap platform is really the core target. They want to create content applications based on that, connecting to the two repositories, Content Server and Documentum. I think that will be the final architecture of their goal architecture. Sorry, just a little chat here. Thank you for asking questions. We will get back to those after the presentation. So that's what OpenText says. Now, to go to the part, should you stay or should you go? Our vision on this. We identified 3 scenarios. So of course you could stay and do nothing. You have your Documentum implementation and you just leave it like that. You could stay but integrate. We see integration as an opportunity that is, like I mentioned in the first slides, within the context of where the market is going, is a very interesting and even maybe mandatory thing. And you could also go and migrate towards, for instance, OpenText Content Server or even other vendors. So if you want to do nothing, what this means to us is that first of all, it's a risk because of the uncertain future of Documentum. I personally really think that I mean, you can't have the focus on Documentum development if you also have Content Server and you want to integrate everything in Leap and you want to create one enterprise content management suite. So I mean, that's an uncertainty. How does it go with issues? How does it go with new features? What doing nothing also means is that you're not using the opportunity to take the momentum, which is a funny word joke here, to take the momentum to change towards future needs. Of course, it does give you some time to wait till OpenText really works out and even proves their new strategy. So that's what doing nothing means for us. You could also migrate. I think migration always is an opportunity to improve your content management. You can think about new structures of your content. You can think about new applications. You can think about new processes, new metadata models. We see always a migration as an opportunity to improve. When you go migrate, you have the opportunity to make the ability to make a new strategic choice in terms of your main archive or main content management solution. Another thing in the migrate, what migration means, there will of course be focus on Leap, integration, like I just mentioned actually. So probably, my opinion, is less development on Documentum as it is. So why should you stay? Migration, of course, does mean an implementation of the new system and a migration scenario. So quickly in a schedule how we always approach migration using our content migration platform. It's an ETL process. I won't stand still with this too long. It's extract, transform, load. Of course, when you connect, we have default connectors for everything. You can connect to Documentum, where you can select, based on business rules, the valuable content or content you do want to migrate, or you want to migrate to a certain system and not an archive. You can make any selection you want based on business rules. There are certain modules then you can use to improve. That's really the value of a migration. Deduplicate, restructure, transform, auto-classify, add metadata. And of course the load using our connectors to OpenText or maybe even another system. So that's about the migration scenario. Then you could also integrate. What this means, in my opinion, then you're ready for the future. You have the option to give users one access point, optimizing their experience, like mFiles does. So they have one access point, mFiles, and they disclose all different kinds of repositories. Also, when you integrate, so you integrate Documentum within, if you have Documentum as an archive, you integrate it in your other ECM system. That's what we consider here. If you do that using a separate integration layer, you also have access to that layer to do other things like central archiving or central records management. Policies around records management or archiving always are enterprise-wide, and applications working with content, like mentioned before, will be all over the place, but they do need central policies around it. So if you have an integration layer, let them all land their content in the central archive. Same with enterprise search. You want to disclose all different kinds of silos and repositories and applications using content through enterprise search. If you have this integration layer within your architecture, then this makes it much easier. Then having this integration gives you, of course, even more opportunities to improve access and processes around content, distribution of content. And but this is a point I want to make, that integration should really be a separate layer within your architecture. I haven't seen it working within ECM vendors. Of course, they do integrate. OpenText has great integration with SAP, of course, with extended ECM. However, it's never everything, and it's hard to maintain if you're not if you don't have it as a separate architecture within your architecture, or solution within your architecture. Sorry. And I encountered this on the OpenText website. Which I find quite funny. So they talk, of course, OpenText has a they call it an integration center themselves. It's InfoFusion. I talked to a colleague, or not a colleague, but someone I know within OpenText yesterday, and they they kind of more use it for analytics and connecting sources to analyze content than really integration. However, what they say themselves is migrating. They use it for migrating content from a legacy ECM repository, such as EMC Documentum. So they call it legacy already, and that, I mean, it might be old and might be there from before the acquisition, but I think it's interesting to see how they point it out. Yeah. So thank you for the questions. I see them coming in, but I will go through them after the presentation. Maybe already touching on one question. Of course, if you integrate, migration will often be a part of this, because you don't integrate because of integration. You will integrate efficiently only the sources you need. In terms of Documentum, I think integration would probably only be when you really use it as a repository accessing through WebTop or other, or maybe a simple D2 environment. Then integration of the repository as itself might be interesting, because there, of course, that of course would be quite stable in terms of development. So how does it look, integration with a single point of access? So the funny thing is with integration, it's almost the same as migration, but then two ways. So this is how a single point of access looks. M-Files has it through their application. You can see different nodes of other content servers, as it were, within M-Files. And this is where I think it will all go. It's a content integration hub. So content is delivered and managed within one central point, and it's connected throughout the enterprise. But of course, every time you would have an extract, load, or transform being part of it. I know this is very high level. Maybe in following, if the questions are there and you find it interesting, maybe in a following webinar we would dive into this. So we're talking about integration and migration, what we do with our platform. I don't want to take too long to discuss this, but I want to quickly touch on our platform. Our platform is, the core of it is a Xillio IDE. Xillio is a language, a scripting language specifically developed for all kinds of content actions. So get text out, get metadata, get security, stuff like that is in function. So it makes it really easy to build connectors and to do transformation. It's open source and it's within an integrated development environment, and you can use it whenever you like, actually. But it's the core of our platform, and this is where we create our connectors and transformation robots. There's a server around it. It's used to schedule the different robots that are created, some user management and logging. And one of the most important things, it all goes into a unified data model. So when you connect to a source, there is a mapping and transformation done to fit it in the unified data model. So it makes it very easy to connect other sources if needed, or disconnect, or to do things with your content. And those things you can do with your content are maybe auto-classifying, so based on the content of a document, add metadata, or dedupe or versioning. That's done through some intelligent modules, and because we do it on a unified data model, it's every time the same. We got some default connectors to all kinds of systems. You see OpenText Content Server is one of them, but also Documentum is one of them. All kinds of WCM and ECM systems. So that's quickly how we do the migrations and integrations. So to summarize now, and I think I've done it within the 30 minutes. So the ECM market is shifting, and I think now is time to act. So in considering this this takeover, this acquisition, it's kind of good timing even, because you can use it to act and to go to a more integrated, more content services based architecture. Another thing, OpenText will move towards Leap platform with content server and Documentum repositories, and this causes some challenges in integrating these platforms, and you don't know how Documentum will develop. That's kind of an uncertainty that there is. I do, however, feel that Leap is a big chance for them. So if they really if it's as good as it seems, it's a really interesting opportunity and a really nice application. So now it's time to move towards an integrated content environment, like I already said. Using the momentum of Documentum acquisition to make this strategic choice, I think, is what you need to do. And of course, use this also to do some consolidation, improvement, and migration where needed. That's to summarize. So, question: should you stay or go? Well, then I can give my consultant's answer. Of course, it depends. I think when you have really a vertical solution implemented with Documentum, because that's of course what they were quite good at, to make it very specific for pharmacy or healthcare, or very specific for the oil industry. I think then going might still be a good idea, because you don't know what Documentum does, but it's harder. I think when you're using Documentum really as a repository, really as a records management kind of archiving solution with maybe some document management around it, some simple workflows, I think you should go. And I think Content Server then may be a good alternative, because you know there's going to be this development within their suite. So it really depends. However, I'm leaning towards going because of the uncertainty and because of the focus OpenText is going to have on integrating the portfolios. And integrating portfolios means less focus on the product itself. So that's basically my take in this. Let's go to some questions right now. One moment. Oops. Yeah, so a question here. Integration doesn't remove the problem that Documentum may not get any further development. Indeed, that is true. So if you talk about integration, I would say integrate a repository within another application, and then have all the more detailed functions around the content within that application. If you have, I wouldn't try to integrate a real vertical functional solution within Documentum. That would be probably indeed a waste of time, because you just delay the migration. So that's a good point. What do you think? Another question from Abdullahi. What do you think about the future of Documentum products like XCP? Any OpenText major replacement portfolio? Should we start looking for change? Well, to my opinion, XCP is the accelerated platform, accelerated development platform on Documentum. It's kind of maybe it's not completely true, but I see it as a layer on the repository. I think Content Server is really capable of replacing that. So the future of XCP, if you talk about that, I think there isn't any. So I think the development of XCP itself as a interface on the repository, there won't be any. So start looking for a change? Yes, maybe that's a good idea. It depends, however, how you have implemented XCP and what your processes are in it. So, and I also got the question if it would be possible to have this presentation as a recording for reference after, and that is possible. So, no problem. Any other questions? One more question is, so I touched on it a little bit already, if we have any experience of migrating Documentum towards OpenText, and we have. So we've migrated several systems into OpenText, and one of them is also Documentum. Actually, we also have experience the other way around. So enough experience of that. So another question comes in right now, the future of D2. Yeah, well, that's a very interesting one. To my opinion, D2 hasn't really, well, but maybe some people disagree, but then I would like to hear in the chat. But to my opinion, D2 is a nice, very configurable interface, but it still has some problems, and also in performance. And I don't think it brought what they thought it would bring. So I think also D2 will be completely tried to be replaced by Leap. So I don't think there's any future in D2. You're welcome. So if there are any other questions, please send them to the email address. So another question comes in. What about D2 and XCP apps migration? I understand content and metadata, but could the apps be migrated to more on the business logic and configuration side? I think that's a very good question. I think that will be more a implementation question. So I think what they want with Leap, the content application development environment, I think what they want with Leap is what D2 and XCP apps are. So that's where it will probably go. And if you want to migrate that in terms of functionality, that would be quite hard to develop on the fly. So you would have to develop the functions and then migrate the content and metadata to work with it. That's my take on how to approach that. You're welcome. So if there are not any questions anymore, please send them if they still come up. Send them to webinar@xillio.com and I'll be happy to answer them.